started off with the panel discussions for today.
Shiv sir, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, good morning, how are you? Can you hear
I'm
me?
good.
Yes, you are
Good
clear.
morning, sir.
Yeah, you are clear.
Fantastic.
Good afternoon. Hello, Richard. Hello, Dimki.
Hi,
Uh,
Rekha.
Hi.
Dr. Rekha, thanks for joining. Dr. Mohit,
Yeah,
thanks for joining as well. So we're
Sure.
going to go live in a
thank
few, in the next
Sir, say
We are
hello.
live already.
Hi, sir. Sir,
few
Ashwin
Hello,
minutes.
sir.
Kumar from the Reva.
Hi.
All right, so we are live. Eric?
Yes, we are live. So thank you all for joining on our panel discussion. And what I would like to discuss with you is about the freedom connected to mobile operating systems. So in main thought about the
Kiran,
phones
Kiran,
and
Kiran.
how we can change with education the total domination of big tech and the influence they have on our young people. So I think it's
So do you want to introduce the panel?
okay. Richard's going to introduce the panel.
We have Dr. Mohit Dubey, who's joined from MIT-ADT University, located in the beautiful city of Pune in India, and he is the Pro Vice Chancellor of the university. Dr. Mohit has worked with Infosys earlier to this, which is a global IT leader in cutting edge technology and consulting services. And right now he's very strongly connected with the education sector through MIT, ADT, and also connected with the other industry IT leaders across the globe. So thank you, Dr. Mohit, for joining us today.
Sure.
We also have Dr. Rekha Suganti from also MIT ADT. Dr. Rekha is a
Who's also joining?
PhD in computer
Yes,
science and
please.
engineering
Sorry.
from
Join me.
Amravati University. She's got a great background in C++ programming and has been involved in many
You're Kiran, na?
training
Yeah,
initiatives and programs across the country.
HOD of ADS.
Uh, Dr. Rekha also
Yeah,
happens to be one of
Central.
our strongest supporters of open source science, and she's truly sees a great potential in future in open source. Thank you, Dr. Rekha, for joining. And over to you.
Hello, good afternoon. My pleasure.
Richard, I'm going to introduce Dr. Ashwini sir and Kiran sir from Reva.
If possible, Devaki, try to put on the cameras, if it's possible.
My camera is on only.
But, okay, if you can introduce.
Yes. I have Dr. Ashwini
Ashwin Kumar from Reva, sir. I'm from Reva. So I'm a professor and the director for School of Computer Science and Engineering. And Dr. Kiran, head of the department for artificial intelligence and data science.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, thank you for joining, sir. From
Yeah, thank.
so the team from Reva has joined from Bangalore, which
Yes, sir.
is
Yeah,
also a fantastic campus and a lot of initiatives in terms of
Yes.
engineering and the innovations that's happening out of the campus there in
Sir,
Reva.
let me just come here so that all three of us
Dr.
can be
Sanjay
visible.
could not join today due to some situations, but he's thank you all for joining from Reva. Yes, Eric.
So, and when we look at the development of mobile operating systems, we see that the world is dominated by Google with Android as an operating system, and we see, of course, also a lot of iOS. What is your take on the influence of these operating systems on our freedom, and then especially for our young students who are still learning and who are trying to build up their careers and develop themselves. Do you see any threat in the control that those big companies have on this?
Dr. Mohit?
Sure. No, thanks, Eric, for joining and having us. Thank you for hosting this and a very a critical and a pivotal question at this juncture when you have at one side the American companies dominating the technology with a lot of proprietary software, and they're being challenged with some of the Chinese software in terms of DeepSeek and some of those others. I think the debate has really, heated up with regards to where the world should be as far as technologies are concerned, whether they should be dominated by the proprietary sense of things or they should be dominated by the Chinese stuff, which is pretty much the communal side of things, where if you ask a question with regards to Chinese politics, it says I don't know about it, right? And there is another set of observation where India plays a role, where we are saying that the platforms, the foundational models, as we call them, the DPIs, the digital public infrastructure, like Aadhaar, which is the identification stack, or it's the payment stack of UPI, Unified Payment Interface, which is necessarily the open source. So the world has to democratize the technology when we look at these stacks where the subsequent set of technologies would be built. So I think it's all the more important for all of us now to look at the open source as the go-to technology, where the kids and the faculty and the all sorts of developer community should look at the foundational building blocks that are available, free of cost, and then build their set of layers, their set of applications, which can be customized, not just to speed up the development part, but also the relevance of those solutions that would be built with this methodology would be very, very specific, with less of bias, with less of generic data being fed into the systems and so on and so forth. So I think it's not even a question of if, it's only a question of when we want to move from these proprietary sort of technologies to the open source going forward. So in my view, the sooner we do that, I think the better it is for the world, for utilizing these technologies for the public good, as I try to put.
I totally agree with you, and we saw already, of course, the last 10, 15 years, a big movement. First, of course, on the server market, with now a huge dominance of Linux in all data centers. We are seeing now slowly the change on the company business application level, where companies like the Odoo community is growing very fast. We see Nextcloud, and we are expecting very soon one of the founders of Nextcloud who's coming to our studio. We see that Nextcloud takes on storm, especially the government market in Germany, where they have exclusive contracts to replace Office 365, to replace Microsoft Teams, to replace SharePoint with full open source solutions, and that's moving onwards. But in my opinion,
and Eric, it's not just the layer of application. I know you mentioned about the application, but if I look at the entire stack, it's the hardware layer of the GPU or the CPUs. How do you democratize that piece of it, right? And we saw
that's an interesting discussion. The hardware is staying behind. In all honesty, there are companies working on it. Yesterday we had a guest from NitroKey, which is a hardware company. We know we have contacts with some hardware companies in India who try to develop new hardware. It's unfortunately that the hardware market is still dominated by Chinese companies, which of course is also a problem. And
No, and I think from Indian government of India's perspective, if you look at we're just starting as far as hardware is considered, considered the entire chip stack is being built out as we speak right now,
yeah,
right?
yeah, for sure.
So that whole hardware piece, once it gets into the open source mindset, so that's the hardware piece. Then you add the layer of the compute or the cloud side of things. Both of these stacks need to be built in a hardware environment, right? And then the third layer of the application would start sitting on top of these foundational models, coupled with the hardware prowess, and so on and so forth. So if you look at the entire stack of technologies, it's not just the application layer that we may start with the open source in the application layer, but you have to go deeper into all the other layers of building this whole entire value chain as open source to go
Yeah,
for.
for sure. It's happening also on the hardware part, because every time I fly to India, there are always engineers of ASML in the plane who are helping India to set up their chip market. So for sure,
Yeah,
that's
the
happening.
challenge with India is this. I mean, because we are so resource constrained, so we only think that it has to be open source so that more and more participation can come in. We want to extract more and more participation from these developers. The set of developers that you're talking to or you meet them around. And the solution needs to be built as a population scale, right? So it cannot be for very few people, right? The technology cannot be accessed by just limited people. So these two elements, when you couple them up, the scale as well as the participation of the general public, that creates a very unique proposition for making it open source.
Yeah, so
We
for
don't have a
sure,
choice really.
and all the universities who jump on the bandwagon and start with us to train students in open source technologies are helping generating the next generation of engineers who will be very much needed, because the world is indeed changing.
Yeah.
So, what's your take on this, Richard?
I have to agree because there has been a huge shift from what was perceived as closed hardware, and now the concept of open hardware is bringing up. IITs are leading the show, if you know Dr. Dubin, Dr. Rekha, that they have started the concept of open hardware. We visited in Trivandrum, we visited a place called Center for Open Source Science in Trivandrum, and they are building a lot of hardware, including drones on the open hardware stack, controlled by Linux and other Raspberry Pi and other open source systems. So there has been a huge traction there as well. Dr. Rekha, what, in your opinion, some of the students have started to participate in one of our Ubuntu Touch timesheet apps. Can you give me their experience and how you felt about the journey that these students had from MIT?
Well, I think like the mindset shift that you've been mentioning, I have been seeing that in students last couple of years, and I think they're having a very great time. The exposure is wonderful. And students are very eager to learn about open source software options and tools which they can utilize for solving the problems, the academic projects, or the tasks that they have to finish. And usually, students look for open source solutions, libraries, so that they can start trying out, solving the problem and checking it out, how it's working. But I think we need to have more of awareness programs among these students so that they can use this platform to the fullest. They can have more options that they can, look for. Maybe they'll have, they would get an opportunity to do some research on what are the different opportunities, what are the different options, what works best for the problem that they need to solve. But otherwise, students are very open. We have been interacting with students from the time that we've started this initiative with you. And students are coming up, by choice. They want to delve deeper and learn more about how the entire licensing system works, what are the constraints, what are the flexibilities that they can implement whenever they're solving or doing a project. But at the same time, students also have a debate on how can they commercialize the solutions that they create if they use the open source platform. And therefore, I feel starting with awareness among students, bringing out all of the platter in front of them, and then talking about how the licensing works, what are the rules and regulations on reusability will help a lot to foster this platform for better use.
Yeah, so yeah, especially the commercialization is an interesting subject. We also have some courses in this where we cover that, but especially when you are combining hardware with software together, then commercialization becomes more easy. Because yeah, when you're selling a product which is physically available, it's of course easier to make a living out of that. But
Yes.
also, when you look at the possibility to make money as a developer, there are a couple of options, of course. And when you look at companies like Nextcloud, you can download all their software without paying any money for it. But still, if you are a big company and you want their expertise and their knowledge in running that software, that's where the service model comes around the corner, and they offer that. So that also for students who want to start an open source company, if they can work out a model where they give service to their customers, still the software can be open source and freely available, but they will be paid for the service that they deliver. So yesterday we had a lecture from Raoul Kramer from Beta Break, with whom we are starting now a project to create, he called it a crowd bounty project. So basically we want to set up a network of websites where open source developers can find small, maybe also bigger software development jobs, and they can make an agreement about the payments they will receive for doing their contribution to the open source project. So it's very early, we only started a week ago, but we will start integrating that into multiple platforms.
I have a question for the Reva team. Dr. Ashwini,
Yes, sir.
could you contribute with your opinion on this?
Sorry,
Sorry, sir.
can you repeat?
I said, could you contribute with your opinion on this, the open source
Yes, sir.
hardware? Yeah. And I believe that Reva is doing some innovation on hardware.
Yes, sir. Already we are totally into the open source systems now. We are not using any legal software. It's totally open source. We are using it for the
A
students.
separate club is there.
Club, and even we have the separate open source club for the students, which we call it a FossFEST, Forum of Open Source Club.
So what kind of programs are you running there for from a learning perspective?
So learning perspective in the sense, especially we have computer science and engineering, what we call artificial intelligence and data science and IoT. And with respect to what we call the database management system, we are using the open source, and even for all the cloud computing, we are using the open source platforms. We are not using any legal softwares. As to only license softwares, we are not using it. Even only one what we are using is that Microsoft, we have the what we call a login credentials for the students. For that we are using it. Outlook we are using it. Rest of the things which we are using it for the lab purpose, all are open source. So we are into total. That was the major concern in the accreditation part of the system. So last 2022, we had an accreditation program in MBA in our school. So there the concern was we are using 99% of the software license softwares you are not using. All the softwares you are using from the open source. They had questioned us. So
Right. You can see the push for open source has actually started, and it's really going
Yes.
on well. And many universities that we visited, their systems are either in open source or students are
I'm
maintaining.
getting a bit afraid that continents like India and Africa will overtake Europe in the run for open source. But that's of course a
That's
joke.
not
It would be good. The more open source we use, the better it is for the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
how do
Eric
you?
and
Yeah.
Richard, Kiran also run, I mean, he is the HOD for artificial intelligence and data science in Reva. So he also needs to give his, thoughts.
Yeah. Apart from that, also from last 9 to 10 years, I'm coordinating with the students with respect to the hackathons. I'm also insisting the students to whatever the projects, prototypes, and unique solutions, what they are building it up based on the problem statements from the other institutions or industry. So we are insisting to go ahead with the open source models. And with the help of now artificial intelligence and using prompts, the students are able to build the open source solutions. And last year we got around from our within our school and the entire university, we reached around 80 plus students winning the hackathon and around 32 odd teams across national level with the means with very reputed universities in North India and across other NITs and in within Bangalore and Karnataka, which are the reputed universities. It's all different teams. It's not only one or two particular teams going and winning it. So we had all 32 teams with the students are having all different category with first year till final year students with CSC and as well as artificial intelligence and IoT domains. So there, whatever the prototypes they develop, at least one or two parameters will be the open source connected. So all the programming will be done using Ubuntu or so Red Hat. Most of the, I think in the labs also we have got open source. So OS has been installed and accordingly the training will be given as part of placement and training and as well as with the skill development program for the students who can able to get the academic experience and as well as they can take it forward in the participating in hackathons and so winning it. So that's what our main goal to get the interest in students and later they can become a successful entrepreneur and they can go ahead with kind of providing the job rather than seeking the job.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's
So
a great one. Yeah.
let's move again over to Dr. Mohit. What's your take on the influence and the development of AI for our educations?
Well, two things before I dive into that question specifically. I just want to weigh in on the commercialization part of it, the earlier question that was being discussed. I think what we have seen as the foundational building blocks would be made open source and they would still be free and that they would be subsidized by the philanthropic capital or the CSR money or some organizations, but it's the customization and the usage of that as a service that would be paid. So for example, in the physical world, just to draw the parallels, if it's the public infrastructure like water, bricks, sand, those are the things which constitute like the foundational blocks. But when you put together and create, let's say, hospital, so customers who are using the hospital services will have to pay. They will not have to pay for the brick and the mortar and the water and sand and all of that. So similarly, when we look at the parallel in the open source as far as digital public infrastructure is concerned. So for example, if I'm building an identification layer, let's say in this case Aadhaar, for example, or a payment layer based on UPI, so people will not be paying for these fundamental building blocks. But when they convert this into something as a service that would be utilized by people, whether it's through learning, whether it's through healthcare, whether it's through agriculture and so on and so finance, accessing the credit. I think that is where the monetization would kick in. So that's the piece on the monetization of the open source, of how it may evolve based on what we have seen so far. Having said that, it's still very difficult. I mean, it's not easier when we look at how do you still monetize that, because you're talking about at scale, right? So these would be deployed at scale, and then if you want to deploy this at scale, you have to reduce the cost so that the accessibility justifies the commercialization aspect of it. But to your pointed question about the AI in education, right? So I think we need to break it down into the layers of learning, right? If you look at the functions of learning overall, whether it's the onboarding of the student, right? How do you make sure that the cost of onboarding a student for all these universities go down very significantly? Right now, all the private universities in the country, I mean, they have to depend upon the old traditional method of rolling out their ads in, newspapers, which are very expensive, hosting these campaigns, do these outreach and collaboration and all of that piece, right? So if we are able to bake in these technology, where the kids who are already in high school right now, can they get a sense of which course I can look at, what kind of a university? So how do we enable the onboarding of these students into this university system by making sure that it doesn't become an exclusive kind of a system? Because right now it is more of an exclusive, that every institution has to go through a same sort of entrance test, and then the entrance test rejects most of them, and the remainders are kind of allotted the seats through the counseling. So I think we need to move from exclusive approach of giving the education to an inclusive approach of education, where we need to see, can a student pick and choose the institution of his choice based on the fitment of his profile, so that it becomes a natural progression from an high school to that particular institution, because he knows that if I'm getting into this institution, this is the one that matches my profile or my interest. So that's on the onboarding part of it, right? Once the student is onboarded, then you talk about the teaching learning processes part of it, right? How do you make it more personalized, in a sense that there are open electives, that there are formats. So the idea is that can we remove the learning part from two things, right? One is, can we remove the learning of a student from time-bound activities? Like every student right now in Indian education system is bound towards 15 hours a credit, right? So if I'm a slow learner, right, I may take 20 hours, but I will fail if the exam is conducted after 15 hours. I may excel if an exam is taken at 7 hours, after 7 hours, I can still excel because I'm a fast learner. There is no provision of such nature right now.
Flexible system we have to bring in.
FCFS system.
Flexible system we have to bring in, sir.
So I'm saying, how do you use technology to bring that in, right? I think that is the question that is right now being asked, of how do you enable some of these functions when you look at the life cycle of a student from end to end, when he enters the education system and when he becomes an alumni. What are these pieces of engagements which can be faster, better, cheaper kind of a thing by using these technologies for both the student and the institution. And the same goes through with the faculty also as well, right? So if I am a faculty today, right, I'm primarily being engaged into a function of transferring the knowledge or transferring the information, which is what I call teaching, which essentially would change if I give the access to these students of these technologies, right? So I don't have to tell them that this is my question, this is the answer, because they already know what is the question and what is the answer, right? So then what is my role if I become a teacher equipped with these technologies, where the same technologies are being used by the students as well? I think there's a lot of thought process that needs to go in, and you throw in the complication of this new education policy. I think there's no easy answer, and the leadership of individual institutions have to sit through and look at what works best for them, and accordingly chart their own strategic plan for next 5 years or 10 years, kind of a thing, including the technology roadmap. Because some might do online university, some might like to do hybrid learning, in pieces. The 40% credits now can be taken up in an online fashion. So a student may not be, while the student might be enrolled into my university, they have a choice of not attending 40% of their courses from my university. So how do you address that using these technologies? So I think there are multiple areas that each university leadership has to think through, and then devise this roadmap for next 5-7 years, including the technology.
Connected to this, regarding the pace of development, younger people, students get, I think, sooner come into contact with this kind of new technologies. How can we help assist the professors keeping up in pace to also learn and use these new kind of technologies? And I understand for a computer science department this won't be a problem, but how do we help other professors who might teach English or might teach history? How do we help them to bridge the gap into this new technology? Because I can imagine if I would be a history professor and all my students would use all kind of AI technologies to publish papers, maybe I won't even know what they are doing and how they are doing it. How can we help those other professors?
Reva, from there was a question to Reva.
Yeah. Actually, the line was not very clear, Richard. We couldn't.
Do I have to repeat?
Yeah, repeat it.
So basically,
Yes, please.
yeah, I was saying life moves fast, right? And for young people, they come earlier into contact with new technologies than older people, often. And I understand that generative AI isn't a problem for computer science professors or for.
Yeah.
But how do we help professors who, for example, are teaching history or English? They don't have often the knowledge of new systems like AI that we have. But how do we help them? Because that is also an issue, I think.
Right.
Okay, yeah, it's a good question. With respect to that, last year AICT has All India Council of Technical Education from India. So they have come up with an initiative with the year 25 is called as Year of AI. So with that, so they wanted AI to be integrated or kind of an awareness to all the institutions and universities that comes under AICT. So with that initiative, actually from next Monday onwards, we are from Reva University. So we are come up with the concept of FossFEST the entire week. And already this week, we have already started with the trainer program. Especially from School of CSC, the trainers have taught for the selected faculty and the students with respect to GenAI, prompt engineering and data analysis using Colab, some basic introductory domain knowledge. So based on that, now for the entire schools and departments, engineering and non-engineering departments. So again, so they'll be giving the training to entire remaining faculty and the students. So we wanted around 16,000 plus students and more than 700 odd faculty and staff has to be trained in at least basic level of GenAI, prompt and data analysis using Colab along with ChatGPT or Gemini. And also next week we are going with a lot of interesting events again with the concept of AI. And also we are launching AI student chapter similar to the IEEE student chapters specific to AI. And also we are focusing on AI, domain-wise AI. That's what we call it as X plus AI. So X can be aerospace or agriculture or performing arts, or it can be legal studies, along with integration of AI. So interdisciplinary research center of excellence have been planned, and so wherever all the domains across the university. So some are the other portion like percentage of AI will be integrated so by 2025. So that's the entire initiative we are bringing with a name called AI First University under the leadership of Honorable Vice Chancellor Dr. Sanjay Chitnis, sir. So that's what. So we are begin the year with so AI with the concept of AI First University.
Thank you. I think that we should end the panel discussion for now, and I would like to thank all guests for their participation, and I will announce now that at 11 o'clock there will be the next masterclass. Thank you. Have a nice afternoon again and evening, because it's already getting slowly a bit later in India. We are still in our morning and time flies. Thank you. And
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Hope to see you soon while we will traveling to India again. Thank you.
Sure. Look forward. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye. See you.
Bye.